and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two compulsive, absolute nut jobs join forces and tell each other the stories they've only recently learned and have bombarded their family members with nonstop until the moment they can join forces and tell their co-host. I'm host one, I'm Theresa, and that is co-host two.
I'm Angie. I'm apparently still writing my notes because I was just looking at them and I put two words together that don't belong together.
That bodes well, especially when you go first.
It's okay. It was a source date and name, so it worked out just fine, but holy crap, I do go first.
You do. Yeah, because last week I did the historically true Last Samurai.
Yeah, and I took him off my list, you giant jerk.
Look, I'm going to be a giant jerk. It's just a question of how I'm a jerk face this week.
And at least you're honest with yourself.
I mean, why lie?
Exactly. Okay. Well then, now that I've got my notes sorted, I feel like this story that I am about to tell you, that I'm just going to jump in, has been a long time coming, and I was going to wait until summer, but it seems that I've been called out. So
Called
without
out?
further ado, I've been called out by you, in fact.
Oh, I mean,
Without further ado, I'm going to tell you the story of D'Artagnan.
oh, yeah, because he was discovered and I was upset that you knew this, didn't tell me, and I was the one who sent you the news article. And you're just like, yeah, old news. You didn't even
Read this
pretend
already.
that I was the source of your information.
I'm so sorry. But I think we have well established that my algorithm for news is not normal people news. So that was at the top of the news cycle for me that day.
You know what? This checks. I'm not even going to complain because I think we all build our algorithm brick by brick.
And sometimes it just be dropping you off in the weirdest places, but you're not even mad. You're like, yeah, okay.
You
I
know
see
what?
what I
I
know how I
needed,
got here.
yeah, I needed the necro pants.
No one needs the necro pants.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut now.
Actually, this is what I will say. The necro pants need no one, but people's response to necro pants is needed because it is freaking hysterical. And no, you still do not have my consent. I love you with all of my heart and soul, but I'm not going to let you wear my legs.
It's fine. They'd have been capris anyhow, you short-legged.
Chicken. And besides, I think it has to be man pants, doesn't it?
Look, women got a coin purse too. It's just a bit more,
Got a dollar bill purse.
yeah, I
Which
mean,
honestly is better than coins.
true.
You
You
can
got
fit
to
a
fold
hundred
that
dollars
money.
in. Right then.
Too far?
All right. Um, my notes, my sources. The Real D'Artagnan. History. The Interesting Bits. By a March of 2016 article from Sharon Bennett Conley. I did include the Smithsonian's article on Does this skeleton found beneath the Dutch church belong to D'Artagnan, the man who inspired the Musketeers? It is from Sonia Anderson. She is a daily correspondent for the Smithsonian. It was dated March 27th of this year. The lovely Wikipedia page. Um, Mostly because the Wikipedia page had a really keen understanding of all of his names. It's kind of absurd.
All of his names. Is he going to be like another General Lafayette 12 names
Yes.
later? Okay.
Yeah, because he's French. So, um, the French Military Museum, the Musée d'Armée, has a really awesome spread of articles on the Musketeers and on French military of the time. And I could probably spend an entire day just playing on those handful of pages. There is a, for lack of a better way to describe this, it's called joinusinfrance.com. They are a blog and podcast all about tourism. And so this particular episode covers the area where he was born, and so by default, him. That is produced by Annie Sargent and Elise Riven. Then there's Le Mot de D'Artagnan, and this particular source just sort of tells the story of why the story of D'Artagnan is so hard because of the amount of, well, shall we say, extracurricular writing that went into the story of D'Artagnan, because there's a true story and then there's the myth, right? Then there's the
Uh-huh.
legend,
And then
right?
there's what Chris O'Donnell did with the character.
Right. Um, so there's a lot of stuff to sort of unthread, and that website had a great explanation. And then the Crossroads magazine has an article talking about D'Artagnan's death, written by Heidi Schmidt in 2006. So, with all that said, sweet baby Charles de Batz de Casimir was born sometime between 1611 and 1615 at his family home, the Chateau de Casimir, in Lupiec, in Gascony. So, for context here, this is the beautiful southwest region of France. Now, according to Wikipedia, that I read on him, his father, Bertrand de Batz, he's the Lord of Casimir and the Seigneur de Planck, and he is the son of a newly minted merchant who is like sort of rolling in the dough. His name is Arnaud de Batz, and he had been the one to purchase the castle. So, like, three generations have lived in this castle so far. So,
That's not
not
bad
old
for a
money, not
merchant.
new money, right? Right? Yeah. And his mother is, I'm so sorry if I butcher this. This was the hardest name in here. His mother's Francois de Montesquieu. She is the daughter of Jean, Signor de D'Artagnan. Um, so the world at the time that he was born in is super convoluted. So without like getting into the backstory of like France at the time, just know he is raised in a really interesting time in France. And he leads this life, like the life we know he led, and it's wild, right? But what we don't take into account is that like it came from somewhere. The original writings of D'Artagnan were written by a man called Gatien Cordelis de Sandre, and he is this author about 80 years after the death of D'Artagnan that learns about him and is like, holy cow, we got something to work with here. And he proceeds to write a 4-volume memoir of
Four
D'Artagnan's
volume.
life. 4 volume, but it's based in like, it's not all 100% accurate. um, he learns the whole story, like based on the documents and like, court records, church records, things like that, and then sort of just embellishes what he doesn't know. And forever, it seems to me that people know that what he's writing is not 100% true, but they're like they take it for that's what it is and just enjoy it. And then um, our guy Dumas, he picks it up this previous writer's writing and is like, wow, okay, um, let's do it. Let's take this memoir and write it into the D'Artagnan romance that includes several more books. And he knows his source has been fictionalized, but he runs with it anyway. And he then proceeds to make it seem legit in the first pages of the book for the believability of the Three Musketeers. So, like, we know they're real. We know all of these events that are described in the book happen in one way or another, but how they happen might not be exactly how he says. And so basically, Dumas does it for the plot, right?
Right.
Like, he knows what he's doing, and he's okay with it. So all that said, D'Artagnan's actual story is buried in all of this lore, and there's a lot of teasing out of the actual facts. But either way, his life is incredible. So we don't know much about his childhood. He does have several siblings, two of which would become the captain of the guards. Now, I had read somewhere that you couldn't get into the Musketeers without prior guard service, but that might not always be the case. It seems like you could get on in on merit, like perhaps if you have like a couple of really great references and you're noble, and our guy is both of these things. But anyway, in the mid 1630s, D'Artagnan finds himself in Paris, and that's the point at which he takes the name D'Artagnan, right? Because at this point he's been Charles de Batz de Casimir. However, the sort of leaning of his maternal side of the family has a little bit of sway. So he just clocks on that D'Artagnan, and that's what he goes by for the rest of forever. And I think that's awesome,
Ah, well
right?
done.
Right? Now he joins the guards. I think he's about 17 at the time, and he serves in the guards under a man called Captain des Arts. And for some context, real quick, I think this would be helpful. You have the regular guard, and then you have the musketeers. Okay.
Now,
The
what's
musketeers,
the difference between the two?
that's why I'm here.
Okay.
The Musketeers are special. Here's their backstory. It's 1622. King Louis XIII is at war with the Protestants because, surprise, surprise, that battle does not just happen in England. And he decides at the time in 1622 to detach 50 soldiers who are armed with carbines from the company of the guards of his light horse cavalry to form its own unit. These men are armed with a sword and a musket. At the time, the musket is this heavy weapon that can only be used on foot. But these fellas are still counted as cavalry because that's how they move. That's the units they came from. That's how they move around. That's how it works. And they
Okay.
are called the Musketeers of the Guard. Now, these guys are the king's own bodyguards. So he has taken from the greater guard and been like, you will be my household guards. Like, you're my
You are the
favorite.
elite force.
Yes, that is the easiest way to explain it. I love this next bit. They are a part of what is called the Maison du Roi, which is the House of the King. Their uniforms, they're iconic with the blue tabard decorated by the cross and the fleur-de-lis, which is the symbol of the king's household. And they are typically made up of gentlemen and nobility who are proven soldiers. So it's worth mentioning, I don't have this in my notes, but it is worth mentioning that the cardinal, like Cardinal Richelieu, also has his own set of personal bodyguards, and they don't play well. Like they never have, and they probably never will.
Surprise, surprise. They have competing
Shocking.
priorities.
Exactly. So there's the first and the second company of musketeers. They are distinguished by the color of their horse. You have gray for the first and black for the second. The
Wait,
king,
horse is the literal horse color, not the
yeah,
accoutrement on the horse.
no, the color of the
Okay.
horse. Yeah. The king is in fact their captain, but everyday command goes to a captain and lieutenant and then so on and so forth, like down the regular military ranks. Um, I love this. The captain lieutenant that is currently the king's captain is a man called Captain Travier, and serving underneath him are none other than Athos, Porthos, and Aramis.
All right. Here we go.
So you do have like this actual historical base. They all three have these amazing names. See if I can say them all without absolutely butchering. You have Armand de Siglou de Athos. So there you go. Isaac de Porthos, and Henri de Armitage, who becomes Aramis. And I feel like it is so important to tell you that I have in my entire life had the biggest crush on every Aramis to ever play Aramis.
All right.
So yeah, yeah, love me some Aramis. So now that you have all that, D'Artagnan. In his early years, he joins the guard, and there's like a ton of action, and it's likely that he has taken part in a lot of these sieges and little skirmishes. Around this time, D'Artagnan gets in good with the Cardinal Mazarin. This is Richelieu's protege, and he is his successor, and he is also the first minister of France. So, like, Cardinal Mazarin is kind of the guy you want in your pocket, you know? Um, and this is great for D'Artagnan because Mazarin's now his patron. And in 1643, Mazarin goes on to serve as the regent for the newly crowned Louis XIV, who is only 5 years old when he takes his seat on the throne. So you're seeing how this is super beneficial for our guy D'Artagnan because his boss man is the boss man.
Right.
This is also around the time that with Mazarin's help, D'Artagnan, he's about 30, he is able to join the Musketeers. So up to this point, he's just been part of the regular guard of France. And that's pretty much when things go south. um,
Oh,
yeah. For the sake of time, there is a ton of drama. You've got Anne of Austria, the baby king's mom, Cardinal Mazarin, and basically everyone else. There's not a ton of people like nobles or parliament that really like Mazarin, but he's kind of this big deal, right? Like he's the regent for the king and he's a minister of France. So this is like a thing, and right around 1648 something called the Fronde begins.
the Franz. This sounds like it has an upturned leather jacket. And he goes,
Honest to
"Hey."
God. Yeah. I don't know why, but every time I see the word Fronde, all I can think of is frog, and I have no reason why I think that, but I keep thinking of little frogs in battle. It's irrelevant. But anyway, a lot of these little skirmishes, these uprisings, they have a lot to do with the 30-Year War because this has left France in a bit of a financial crisis. So it's basically a time of civil war in France. Things aren't great. During the Parliament's frondes, the laws, like the law courts, refuse to obey the king's government and demand their rights to be respected. Well, obviously, the king's government is sort of ruled by Mazarin right now, right? Um, Things get so bad that the royal family actually have to sneak out of Paris in the middle of the night to escape the angry mob.
Yikes.
Like they are not having a great day. And then later you have something called the Nobles Fronde, and this is sort of when the powerful nobles join in. They're forming their own armies, they're fighting against the royal government. Some of them team up with France's old enemy Spain, which is like a pretty bold move anyway. And this sort of stuff goes on until about 1653. Eventually, people get tired of the fighting and the chaos. It's like causing just sheer ordinary everyday life, and Mazarin manages to hold things together. And by 53, these little rebellions sort of fizzle out. But by this point, Louis is now a teenager, and he has watched this his whole life. So he's like, holy crap. Now, while it is not relevant to the story of D'Artagnan, it is interesting to point that because Louis has seen this and seen how um, nobles and parliament and all of these people can sort of just on a whim rise up against the royal family, he they suspect, like historians suspect, that that's why he rules Versailles the way he does.
That makes
Like
sense.
this, right? This iron-fisted, keep everybody occupied every minute of the day. That way they don't have a chance to form the thought against me.
Yeah, idle hands are the devil's playground sort of deal.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's pretty interesting. And so Louis, for his part, he is pretty untrustworthy. And as far as like he doesn't trust others. And he's determined that no one's going to challenge his power, period. And that's sort of the end of it, and that's why he develops this absolute monarch idea. But all of this has also kept D'Artagnan very busy. He's been dabbling in espionage for the cardinal, like in real life, not in the stories, because things for the cardinal aren't great. Um, D'Artagnan, he is like great at court for whatever reason. D'Artagnan has the personality, he has the chutzpah, and court life is great for him. He is the king of court intrigue. People like, I don't know if it's just that he walks in and has this immediate likable personality where people just want to tell him stuff, but he has admirers everywhere he goes. So when the fronds are happening, Cardinal Mazarin, he has to go into exile. D'Artagnan follows him, but acts as his messenger between the cardinal and allies back and forth constantly.
So wait,
And then
let
in
me let me test my understanding. We know D'Artagnan, like everyone
mhm,
knows D'Artagnan is the Cardinal's number
mhm,
one or number two.
right,
And they have no problem telling him stuff and then him just absconding for
pretty
periods of
much.
time. Wow. Okay, so this is everybody knows James Bond's name. Know he's the best spy, but still proceed. Okay, carry on.
That's from everything that I read about him, that is his one like not great at being I'll say later he gets a governorship. He's not great at that. He sucks at that, but he's really, really good at court. And it just goes well for him. Like he has admirers and they can't help but just open their mouths and talk to him. Now, in sif in 1652, he's promoted to the lieutenant of the Grades Français, which is part of the elite French infantry because during this time the musketeers are otherwise disbanded. So this sort of sets the scene for a lot of the intros for D'Artagnan in the books and the movies today, right? Like they come in and Athos, Porthos, and Aramis are like drinking in a bar somewhere because they don't
Yeah.
actually have a job. This is that time. Um, and that also explains why he's not currently their lieutenant because there are no there. So during this time, he sees some more good battles, he sees some more sieges, and in 1655, he's promoted to captain. And then in 1658, he becomes the second lieutenant in the reformed musketeers. So now this means he is running the day-to-day command of the musketeers.
Wait. So in the movies, because I've not read the book, I'll be honest, um, we see D'Artagnan as kind of the runt, the newbie.
Hmm.
But we're saying in real life, he outranked Athos, Porthos,
Hmm.
and wow. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. Now, I think in from what I understand, and this isn't really clear in the notes because they're 400 years old, but from what I understand, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis were there when he got there. So they would have been older, but he just rose through the ranks consistently. So I part of me wonders if they just reached their peak and there was always someone higher than them anyways.
I mean, they
And
may
then
not have had that same champion in the Cardinal.
right, because clearly you need to have a patron that's going to speak your name to the good Lord, you know?
Right.
Like and he had that. So I really think in their case it wasn't that they couldn't, it's just that they didn't have the same
Sponsorship.
foot up. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But it is fun to know that they were there and they were consistent in his life and he just kept rising through the ranks till he is running the Musketeers. Um, he does actually marry in 1659, which is cool. Like I wouldn't don't know why, but I guess because he doesn't really in the books, it doesn't ever cross my mind that there would be like a woman involved.
A
And
woman? No, I'm
a
joking.
woman, her name is Charlotte Anne de Clancy, and she's like a baroness of St. Croix. They have two sons, born in 1660 and 1661, and they are both named, wait for it, Louis, after their godfather, the king.
Okay, wait. No, like I'm assuming they have nicknames they go by because that
Oh, I'm sure
is
they do.
otherwise it's just like, hey, Bubba, four heads turned. Yes?
Yeah, I'm sure that they have their own individual like middle names, but they are both named after their godfather, the king. So this is how high up the chain his everyday life is. The king is his son's godfathers, or his
Yeah, the
son's
king,
godfather.
his boss, the king, is
Right.
also so close that it's okay.
He was there at their baptism. Um, so I think it's super cute actually. So it's Louis and his son Louis, the Dauphin, are the godfathers. Now, unfortunately for D'Artagnan, the marriage doesn't last long, and the couple officially separate in 1665.
Oh,
They think it's due to his long absences on duty. Shocking. That seems pretty common. Now, um, here's where life takes an absolute different direction for him. There's this guy called Nicholas Fouquet, and he's the finance commissioner to Louis XIV, and he would very, very much like to take Mazarin's place as the king's advisor. And in a very shortened version of the story, he F's up, and it goes as follows. Mr. Fouquet is hugely ambitious and very wealthy, and he fully expects to become the chief minister of France after Mazarin's death in 1661. However, Louis XIV is deeply suspicious of him, partly due to negative reports that are fed to him by Fouquet's rival, a man called Colbert, and for other reasons. But despite this, Fouquet he he feels relatively secure because he has his legal position gives him immunity for most prosecutions, um, until he's tricked into giving it up
Oh,
because he's an idiot. Um, there's a quote from Colbert, his rival, that said, Fouquet managed to conduct his robbery while keeping his hands clean. Which just,
I mean, if your enemy can say that about you, you were doing something kind of right.
rightish. You're right. Okay, so basically what happens is his downfall is brought on by a combination of factors. He's got this super lavish lifestyle. He builds this chateau and then like stupid expensive, and then throws this extra extravagant party in 1661, and this party makes the king deeply uncomfortable. He is like, you're not supposed to be more grandiose than I. This does
Oh,
not sit well with me. And because our guy is an idiot, he decides that the party favors he's going to give out for attending this party are a horse for everyone.
you get a horse. You get a horse.
Yeah, he's opening it up, right? And this really just the king doesn't really appreciate all the showing off, right? But in the meantime, our guy has been secretly building up military power and fortifying the island of Belle-Île, and he's got hundreds of cannon and soldiers, and he's ordering warships from the Netherlands, and he's developing a network of powerful allies. The king, still thinking about his childhood, is like, no,
Hey,
no,
that's
thank you.
sus. Yeah.
Right? So he's super wary of any movement that, like, doing anything openly against Fouquet because he does have these powerful allies, and he is not trying to go down the same road, right? Um, so he, sorry, I lost my spot in my notes. Okay, so the king manages to strip him of his legal immunity by maneuvering him into selling the office that protected him, which I'm not sure how you do that. But he does it willingly in attempt to win the royal favor. He also doesn't help his own cause because he is trying to recruit one of the king's own mistresses as a spy.
Yeah, you have to swing and not miss on that one.
Yeah, and she's like, no, and immediately goes home and reports him to the king. So,
Surprise!
hey, guess what? You were right. So on September 5th, 1661, Fouquet is arrested by D'Artagnan, and he is seemingly very caught off guard. Now by this point he believes himself to be fully in the king's favor because things are going great for him.
Yeah.
Um, the charges are embezzlement and high treason. And his trial drags on for nearly 3 years and is widely considered to be deeply unfair because the judge, they're handpicked by his enemy, Colbert.
Now,
So,
wait a minute. It lasts 3 years? If this was a
yeah.
kangaroo court, I would expect it lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for exactly 3.5 minutes, came back with donut crust around their lips because they had a snacky, and said guilty.
Yeah, I part of me wonders if this is just because it's France or they really just want to stick it to him. Nothing really explains why it gets dragged on other than we know his enemy Colbert has definitely got his hand in the mix. So I have a feeling he is really just trying to stick it to him for as long as he possibly can.
So it's just
Um,
torture.
Pretty much. Most judges in this particular trial vote banishment, but Louis overrules this and sentences him to life in prison. And which I guess is the same thing as banishment in my opinion, but you are literally just behind bars instead of being able to like, I don't know, go off to a
No,
Caribbean
banishment
island
means I have
somewhere.
access to my wine cellar, just in a different
Or a
country.
wine cellar. Yeah. He doesn't. He spends his remaining years locked away in the fortress of Pegronal in the Alps, where he dies in 1680. Now, here's the thing. Louis doesn't want this man getting out, and he doesn't trust anyone. But you know who he does trust, and who he knows can't be bought, is D'Artagnan. So, for the duration of his jury, or for his trial, D'Artagnan is assigned to guard him because no one else can be bought. Like he cannot be bought by anybody else. So D'Artagnan's like, "Hey, really, really great of you to think so highly of me, but like I hate this job."
This is
Um,
boring. There's no Wi-Fi.
Pretty much. Like this is the worst. So he finally gets to drop him off at the prison in the Alps after the trial is done, and D'Artagnan gets to go on soldiering until he is required to bring in another high-profile arrest. Now, this high-profile arrest is the Duc de Lauzun, who had dared to marry La Grande Mademoiselle. This is the sister to the king, and this did not sit well with the king, so the Duke is getting arrested for his actions of trying to marry his sister. And because he is a high-profile individual, D'Artagnan is the one that sees him across to his Alps prison, where Fouquet is sitting in the cell right below him. So it's funny to me that he has to make this trek more than once, and he just can't get away from this guy. Now, in 1672, D'Artagnan is awarded for all of his valiant efforts and made the governor of Lille. He's not great at it. He sucks, in fact. And in 1673, he's back as the head of the Musketeers marching into the Dutch wars. Like, I think even the people of the region were like, could you just, like, we were fine. We were fine without you. Can you just go?
Yeah, yeah.
Bye.
It, honestly, you've done such a good
Yeah,
job. You've taught us to lead ourselves. That's the sign of a good leader. You've worked yourself out of a job.
pretty much. Yeah. Uh, Now, Louis, he has marched into Maastricht. It's the head of his troops. It's June 10th. He's surrounded by French, and believe it or not, they're English allies, and this siege begins. D'Artagnan leads his men on this fierce attack on a fortified position that's protecting the Tongres Gate. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And they capture it within half an hour and they raise the French flag in victory. So you'd think, cool, we're done here, right? No. The situation takes a very dangerous turn because the Duke of Monmouth, one of the English commanders, makes the reckless decision to charge across the open ground toward the gate himself. Unclear why. D'Artagnan, who is a far more seasoned soldier, most likely sees this for the folly that he is, but because Monmouth has made the charge, honor and duty require that D'Artagnan cannot just leave him hanging.
Okay, yeah.
So he leads his musketeers forward into the fray. They're right there with him. He makes it to the ramparts before he takes a musket ball to the neck. It would seem
To the
fitting that his
neck.
service to the neck, his
Ugh.
service started in a siege and it came to the end in a siege. He died on June 25th, 1673, about 60 years old. The musketeers were grief-stricken because even by then he was legendary among them. King Louis wrote to his wife saying, Madam, today I lost D'Artagnan, in whom I had every confidence. And that is the story of
Wow.
D'Artagnan.
Wow.
So there you have it.
That was illuminating, and I legitimately had none of that info.
So now you do.
Okay,
He was
well,
real.
I'm
He did the
here
thing.
for it.
Oh, and all I
Okay.
can think of now, and we'll probably have to watch it later, is the Man in the Iron Mask, just so I can watch the captain say, "All I ever wanted to be was him."
Mm.
It's my favorite part of the whole movie.
So I'm going to take us on a wildly different tangent.
Shocking.
Yep. Okay, this story was suggested on Instagram by a user named Jess Cup Artist. And she's
Jeff's cup artist?
Jess Cup with two P's, artist.
Oh, okay.
Okay. They suggested that I cover Yukio Mishima.
Okay.
All right. You were either have no idea or you were going to fangirl this person. Like, those were the only options.
Okay, let's go.
All right.
Make me a fangirl.
My sources. Actually, you're probably not going to be a fangirl, but I mean, you're going to be like, oh, that dude. Okay. BBC has an article, Yukio Mishima, The Strange Tale of Japan's Infamous Novelist by Thomas Graham. Yukio Mishima by Patrick Adcock. And then I did some podcasts as per my want. Ridiculous History at a two-part series on him, the Yukio Mishima story, and The History of Literature, episode 312, Yukio Mishima. Are you
This is
ready?
sounding more familiar, but keep going.
Okay, so 1925, Kimite Hirooka is born. He would later go by Yukio Mishima. Now, he is a prominent Japanese author, playwright, and political advocate known for his complex personality and dramatic life. Now, as a wee one, he is said to be a delicate boy, in quotation marks. From what I understand, he had
Okay.
uh, pretty heavy asthma,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's not like I have access to his medical chart. So, it's so bad.
Dang it.
I would
Theresa.
look, I can only dig so deep.
Could
Um, his grandmother takes him from his parents, saying that he's too fragile to live in a home with a second story.
Okay.
Like, he cannot be trusted to go
Sure.
upstairs. And so maybe grandma's crazy, or maybe our boy really is that delicate. Either way, um, during this time, he's basically confined in his grandmother's house, and he's only interacting with female members of his household until he's around 12.
Okay.
At which point, when he turns 12 or so, his grandmother's health deteriorates so badly, she's hospitalized and will later die. And so at this point of confinement, he is taken from grandma's house and moved back to parents' house.
Okay.
Now, he has kind of a privileged environment that he grows up in parents' house, because he's attending prestigious schools. Later, he's studying law at the University of Tokyo. So this seems fortuitous in that regard,
Yeah.
delicate or not. Now, while he's still a schoolboy, he meets another man named Kawabata. And Kawabata is later going to receive a Nobel Prize in Literature in 1968.
Okay.
So he is rubbing elbows with some incredible humans.
Okay.
Now, the elder writer will basically serve as a literary influence for him, but also as a lifelong friend.
Okay.
Now, in some of the research that I did, it would go on that Yukio wanted to win the Nobel Prize for Literature himself, but realized since, there was another Japanese writer that recently won it, the chance of him winning is very slim. And so he
Okay.
kind of sees that as a foregone conclusion that Japan's not going to win it multiple years in a row.
Interesting.
Does
Okay.
that make sense? Now,
Yeah.
is it valid? Who knows? I didn't do that deep dive. Okay, now fast forward. It's 1944. He's conscripted into the army, and it's here I have some conflicting reports, because EBSCO says his conscription to the army in February of 1945, but he sees no action in the closing months of war, uh, and his service period of his active service is really short. But it still affected him profoundly for years to come. There's other reports that say he's rejected because of this weak physique that he has. Maybe both are true. Maybe he is both conscripted and put on the sidelines because he's not able to do much.
Right. Okay.
So maybe there's that, because I don't have his medical records. But here is where his literary career basically begins to take off, and he would gain recognition for his autobiographical novel called Confessions of a Mask. And this book is in the 40s, exploring themes of identity and sexuality.
Yes. Okay. All right. I know who he is.
Wow.
Keep
Okay,
going.
cool.
I
Now,
don't know much, but I knew as soon as you told me what he was writing, because it was all sounding familiar, but I couldn't tell why.
fair. Um, around this time period, he's critical of the emperor and the actions of the soldiers in World War II and those wartime atrocities that Ginny Chan guest starred in episode 168. And for those of you playing at home, episode 168, so just a couple episodes back, she is a profound human who uncovered a million pages of documentation on comfort women and Unit 731. And this is Unit 731 is where the Japanese were experimenting on Chinese citizens. Horrific stuff. And Yukio Mishima is dead set against it because
As you should be.
yeah, he finds this incredibly unethical and he has the cojones to shake his fist. Now, 1949, he publishes that book, Confessions of a Mask. And this is that thinly veiled novel where it would go on to make him famous. And he's in his 20s about this time. It tells the story of this delicate, sensitive boy who's basically held captive in his grandmother's house. She's ill, and he's made to nurse her back to health. But rather than playing with any of the neighborhood boys, he's confined in what he describes as her sickly, sweet smelling darkness of her bedroom.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, sounds lovely. But in that book, this boy's mind develops in that room, kind of trapped. Fantasy and reality are never really separated. Fantasy becomes more dominant of the two. And by the time his grandmother dies and the boy emerges, he's developed a fixation on role playing with life as theater. And he can't resist layering fantasies over the life around him,
This
which,
checks.
yeah. Now, men and boys, especially muscular, straightforward ones, are assigned roles in his vivid, often violent daydreams. And he tends to obsess over his own deviance of, really worshiping the male physique and trying to appear normal. And he learns how to play his own role. And there's a quote that I pulled that said, "The reluctant masquerade had begun."
Yeah. Okay.
Now,
I'm trying to remember why I know any of this.
I mean, this was all brand new to me. So I'm
It had to
kind
be
of
from a class I took, but I can't remember why. Anyway,
there.
sorry.
Now, the critics who really know and understand his books suggest that this novel would set the tone for the rest of the fiction that he writes. And he, at the publishing of this, adopts an entirely new name. This is where he goes by Yukio Mishima, and a new personality because he's going to mask the vulnerability, the timidity that he has, and the aestheticism with this arrogant and provocative persona.
Get it, buddy. Fake it
Like,
till you
look,
make it, I guess.
we all hide pieces of ourselves. Now, he and his whole body of work is going to include novels like The Temple of the Golden Pavilion and The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. And then he also has some modernized no plays to his name. Many of his plays are produced, and he would also go on to direct them.
Okay.
Now, he's cranking out books during this time as well. So prolific. Like this is one of those just keeps writing, keeps writing, keeps writing
He's the
kind of deals.
Brandon Sanderson of his time.
Dude. Now, June 1st, 1958, he marries a woman, Yoko Sugiyama, and eventually goes on to father two children, Noriko and Ichiro. But then something snaps within him. Something changes. He starts to take on a new phase. It's the 60s, and he's entering this political phase of his life. He's portraying himself as a pure aesthete. He's a decadent romantic, and he's undergoing a transformation. Remember, delicate boy, right? That's where we start. He's
Hmm.
taking up bodybuilding. He's working out at the gym for 2 hours a day, and he is putting on muscle. Now,
Good
imagine
for
more
him.
of a Bruce Lee body frame as opposed to bodybuilder.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he, even with putting on muscle, is still 5'3".
Oh, right. Okay.
So yeah. Now,
So, yeah.
short and
Not
not
not Henry
tall even
Cavill.
for Japanese. He's also bronzing himself in the sun. He is trying everything he can for a glow up. Now, it's at this point in time he starts setting up a group of right-wing male university students that he's leading through his workout routines.
Okay.
Now, here's where things kind of get a little bit bizarre because he's in his 40s and he becomes really aware of his age, like many in our 40s do. Things don't heal as quickly, that eyesight starts going a little bit, and you got to be a little bit more protective of what goes in that mouth. Um, Now, he makes this statement that I find absolutely bizarre because this is shortly after the death of James Dean, the actor. He says, "The beautiful should die young and everyone else should live as long as possible. Unfortunately, 95% of people get it backwards with the gorgeous lingering on into their 80s and hideous fools dropping dead at 21." Which
So where do you stand on James Dean?
he loved James Dean. He's like, James Dean is
Okay,
beautiful. And why did James Dean
that's
get it
what I
wrong?
was. Okay.
Like, or is it James Dean died, right? And he goes, this is the pinnacle of life. Die at your peak. If you're old and
Okay.
decrepit, hang on, kick it into your hundreds, whatever you got to do. But, that
But
the flower
right.
should be picked right at the pinnacle of its appeal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Now, as he is writing this, he seems to understand that his moment is passing and he begins to really contemplate his final moments.
Okay.
This is foreshadowing, not even subtle, just foreshadowing. Now, 1970, he writes a book called Sun and Steel, and he describes the process of his personal philosophy of physical prowess and the beauty of a violent death. And this is
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
as he's undergoing this rigorous training, often very militant. Now, he's also kind of going a little bit more versatile in his work. Remember, he's adding plays and all of this other stuff, and he's becoming more and more flamboyant. So he would go on to be a motion picture actor, screenwriter, director. He even appears in a gangster film.
Wow. Okay.
So, a jack of all trades. That's kind of what we're getting. He becomes a recording artist and he would achieve more celebrity as a television star than he would from his many literary prizes and awards.
Okay.
So just he's everywhere in pop culture, is what I'm understanding.
He's doing the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, he would build an Italiante villa in Tokyo and he's going to fill it with English antiques. And then he's going to enroll his wife in Western cooking classes.
Okay.
And this is really bizarre when you consider that. Okay, so I'm going to add on that he's also, his writing starts to pull from more French literature than the Japanese that he's previously done.
Okay.
Okay, all of that's happening. Yet, this is the bizarre bit, he's opposing the westernization of Japan. He even hates it.
But I'm putting my wife in Western cooking classes and I'm filling my house with English antiques.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is a bizarre juxtaposition happening here. Um, as all of this is happening, he is writing essays and articles, and he's trying to advocate for this return to the samurai tradition, this very idealized path or past that we
Right, right,
have.
right.
And he's organizing, remember that small group of university students that he was taking through workouts? He forms them in kind of apostles and names this group the Shield Society.
Okay.
Now, this is really bizarre to me, and I kind of feel like that duality and this it's fascinating and like, oh, what the hell? What? Okay.
Yeah, why?
Yeah. Now, his elitism, his militancy, and this idealization or this idealization of the samurai tradition is disturbing many people in his circle. And when people look at the Shield Society, it's stirring up memories of this military adventurism that led Japan into World War II.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because they're fresh out of that, right? Like it's only been 20 years. So veterans are still walking around going, ooh, this, I've seen
We've
this
done this
before.
before. This
History
is gonna great.
rhymes. This sounds like the second verse.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
But he's got this charismatic personality and his provocative behavior just kind of makes him fodder for journalists. And they're seeking him after, like there was, pardon me, they're seeking after him as a guest for talk shows and whatnot. So he is just
Oh,
becoming more and more
that's wild. I
ubiquitous.
didn't even think like talk shows.
I
They
say
don't exist yet.
I said talk shows, but in my notes it says television shows, so I'm just my brain is
Yeah, yeah,
filling
yeah.
in gaps that may or may not have been there.
Okay, okay. I'm assuming talk shows did, but my brain just went, wait, no, we're not. Oprah's not here yet.
Right, but I mean, because it's the late 60s at this point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now fast forward. It is November 25th, 1970, and he has his final book of a tetralogy, and it's called The Sea of Fertility, and he turns it into his publisher. This would be the last of four books that he's written in this frantic burst of creativity. The series starts in 1912. It's shortly after the Russo-Japanese War, and then the series ends in 1975. It spans this period of incredible change where we see the Japan ascend from the imperial Japan all the way through the annihilation of World War II. And we see the emergence of this capitalistic, consumeristic Japan. They're held together by this main character named Honda, and this conceivably is a stand-in for Mishima himself. And Honda is reincarnated repeatedly with his boyhood friend, who is this enduring soul surrounded by change and decline. Decline because he's seeing the fall of samurai traditions and then the rise of capitalism.
Right, okay.
Now, when you compare this series to his earlier works, there's a lot of philosophizing. But after the second one, the volumes begin to feel really rushed and they're really slim. Like he's just trying to get the bullet points out kind of deal. And then
He's submitting the Cliff Notes.
exactly, like he doesn't have time. He's got stuff to do. The final volume, The Decay of the Angel, he writes basically entirely during his family's seaside holiday in August of 1970, which sounds like a frenetic thing. I don't know how long your holiday was that you wrote an entire novel, but here we are.
Yeah.
Now, in a letter dated November 18th of 1970, he writes it to his mentor, Fumio Kiyozumu, and he writes, "To me, finishing this book is nothing more than the end of the world." So
Okay.
he says that November 18th, and this is now November 25th. November 25th, after he sends that book to his publisher, he and four members of the Shield Society invade the headquarters of the Eastern Ground Defense Forces. They kidnap the commander at knife point, and they make him assemble the entire garrison in front of the building that they're in. His goal, he wants to start a coup.
Right, okay.
Because remember, now Japan doesn't have a standing army, but they're allowed to have a defense force.
Right.
And he's on this rooftop without a microphone and he's railing against the US backed state and the Constitution. He's berating the soldiers and their submissiveness, and he's challenging them to return the emperor to a pre-war position as a living god national leader.
He's standing on business.
Now, he's got like several hundred humans in front of him listening without a microphone, so I can't imagine his voice carries very far. Now, because this is Japan, the audience is very politely listening to him at first. Then maybe it could be that they're just stunned into silence, but soon they start to drown him out with jeers.
Oh,
So
okay.
things go south quickly, and Mishima steps back inside and is said to say the phrase, "I don't think they heard me." And it's at this point in time, he kneels down and killed himself by seppuku, which is that ritual samurai technique. And for those of you playing at home may not know, he disemboweled himself with a dagger, and then later one of his followers beheads him with a sword. That follower did such a clumsy job with the blade that he had to hack several times at it. And then, because he felt like a failure, he committed seppuku right next to Mishima.
Okay, that's the part of the story I knew. Right.
Oh,
Yeah. And I'm still trying to remember why I know any of it.
okay. I mean, here we are. I'm glad to at least give you context. His death absolutely shocks the Japanese public because the morning he chose, this is the opening of the 64th session of the Diet, which is Japanese parliament. And the emperor is actually present at the Diet to open it up. Now, the prime minister's speech on the government agenda for that whole coming year gets overshadowed by Mishima's unaliving. Because at this point, nobody had died by seppuku since the last days of World War II.
So it's been, what are we're,
This
you
was
said 75?
1970.
Okay. So it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, but it's still just like, holy crap. Now, something kind of to go back on and to really think about is Mishima had written his own death scene in the 1960 story Patriotism, and later he goes on by adapting Patriotism as a film. And in this film, he's directed it, he acts as the leading role himself. So prophetic is the suicide scene that Mishima's family suppresses the film after he dies.
Because
And
he's been saying it for like 10
oh
years.
yeah, he's been posing in the photos. He's been acting it out like this. They can see that the writing's been on the wall the entire time.
Good Lord.
Now, for those of the Western audience, the the form that he chose to commit seppuku, this is really significant because it would test his courage and his tenacity. Because after you stick the knife in your belly, you need to slowly draw it across the, entirety of your abdomen until your intestines spill out. This requires physical strength as well as some mental endurance to be able to carry on. And that alone makes this whole idea incomprehensible to the Western mind. And that's honestly the entire point that he seems to have been making.
Oh,
Now, I didn't put this in my notes,
gnarly.
but right before he does this, he said to tell his wife that he doesn't think the 1970 Japan will understand why he did, but he believed 50 or 100 years from now that they would.
Oh.
Not that we do, because having just read up on it, I don't see that, but he believed that he was going to usher in that understanding.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah, very visionary, but I've got photos for you.
I love his suit. Okay, you're looking at yeah, when you say Bruce Lee type, yeah, that sort of stature, he's got this, it's like the wool business suit with the tie and the white, very pressed shirt. The lines are immaculate, the hair immaculate, perfect eyebrows. I'm kind of jealous.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's squatting with the I always forget what that's called, that kind of squat when you have the bar. My
Uh,
son would yell at me right now.
the bar over your back. I don't know what it's technically
Yeah.
called. I know I've done these even recently.
Yeah. But he's lifting weights, but he's doing the squat with the bar over the back, and he is your classic, like, it very much looks like this photo was taken in the 60s, the white t-shirt, pants, barefoot in the yard.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in workout pants. He is in trousers.
Yeah. Yeah, I love trousers. I love that word.
But that's the story of Yukio Mishima
I love it.
and his really unhinged thing. And I think one of the things that kind of kept coming back to me is this idea of radicalism. I think I'm against radicalism anytime it comes up. I believe in maybe more
Yeah.
of a middle way. I think once you kind of niche down too hard, whatever direction it is, at some point, even too much water is going to kill you.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we just kind of see him double down on things that may not have been the best for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Well, thank you.
Yeah, my
Thanks for
pleasure.
telling me his whole life, and I'm gonna spend the rest of my day wondering why I knew any of it to begin with.
In 6 hours, I'm going to get a random text that says, here's all the missing dots, and I'm going to struggle to make meaning of it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I'd heard of his books. I wonder if I read an article or something about him because I've heard of the books.
Hmm.
I knew how he ended, but I couldn't for the life of me remember how. Like, what bunny trail was I on?
Well,
I like
if you enjoy these
mysteries.
rabbit trails and you're thinking, I too knew X, Y, and Z, but didn't know how they all connected,
Yeah.
send this to somebody who also needs that rabbit trail. And you can do this thing where you rate, review, subscribe, and it helps other humans similar to you find us and enjoy us. And on that note,
Come on, you little weirdos.
yeah.